Hello everybody. Hi, how are you? My name is Erin. I hope you're having an amazing day today. And welcome to my channel. So, as the title says, I want to reread The Hunger Games. I feel like it's been so long. The first time I read them, I was like 14. It was right after the first movie came out. I asked my mom to get me the books and she did. I read the first book in like a day and a half, and then I read the second book in like 3 days, and then I had to wait like a month to get the third one. I love the story, I love the concept, I love that it's the blueprint for like other dystopian books and films and TV shows, and that I just kind of unraveled this theme in YA of like political dramas and intrigue and war, but also with a touch of romance here and there, and family, and just trauma, also dealing with trauma. But yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to reread The Hunger Games a decade later. Literally, oh my god. Literally a decade later. And so I just want to see if anything changes, like how I feel about it, my opinion on it, the characters I love, the characters I hated, all the deaths. I want to see how they impact me, because I've watched the movies so many times throughout the years that I've desensitized myself from all the deaths and all the characters we lose along the way. So if you'd like to see how this journey goes for me and how it ends, just stay along and keep on watching. Okay, so let's do something and ignore my hair and my face, and yeah, because today's my birthday and yesterday I went out with my best friend, and so yeah. I had fun. Okay, so I have finished The Hunger Games book 1, and I'm very pleased to say that it really holds up. It's been about 12 years-ish, give or take a few, since I read the trilogy, and I was scared going into it because I thought I'd made it bigger and greater than it actually was, but no. I was really pleasantly surprised to read it and be like really absorbed by the story and the writing style and the characters. The plot is fantastic, the world is so well written and established, and so are the rules and the whole politics aspect of it. The writing style is really good. Especially for a YA that was written around the Twilight era. The plot, it has a lot of substance to it and a lot of depth, and so do the characters. I would argue that they do have a certain agency to them, especially Katniss, because she has a, let's call it, rebellious side to her, as any YA character does. But the way she rebels against the Capitol by not even realizing she's rebelling against them, I think it's brilliant. Like the little gestures she has, like with Rue, she says she doesn't know how to play along with like the Capitol's games, but she does. In the interview with Caesar, once the audience starts kind of like playing along with her and laughing at her joke, it kind of like clicks in her head. So she does play along, maybe not consciously, but she does. It makes her a really intriguing character with depth. And again, it's a YA book, and like I love YA, but most YA characters don't have that sort of quality to them and don't have that much depth or agency, and Katniss does. And I'm actually glad to say that this time around I actually liked Katniss, because the first time I read it I hated Katniss with all my being. I think as time went on and my adult mind settled in, I understood why she was so extra. Let's call it extra, but really it's just a trauma response. But overall, I found her a really well-written character. She has a lot of trauma that she just doesn't know how to deal with. So, you know, she is very quick to anger, and she just doesn't know how to interact with people because she is very awkward and she doesn't trust people. And her dad died and she had to take care of her sister and her mom at 11, and so like imagine just all the emotional baggage, and then on top of that having your name so many times for the reaping. It's gotta be a lot. And then we have Peeta, and I am glad to say that I am still such a simp for Peeta.
People think that it's like cool and she's humble and all this, but she actually has mental problems.
I love him. I've loved him since day one, but I remembered him, and maybe this is because I've watched the movie so many times that I just take that as canon, but book Peeta is less soft, if you know what I mean. Book Peeta has some sass to him and has a bit of spice added to him. He has a temper, but he knows how to control it. And I didn't remember this, but Peeta is kind of a low-key feminist, which I appreciate a lot. I love him. I really have nothing more to say other than I will go to my grave saying that he is a sunshine, a little ray of sun that we must protect at all costs, because he's fantastic and I love him. Okay, so the romance aspect of the books. If you took out the love triangle, like if you erased Gale completely, I think it would actually turn this book to a maybe new adult book. And it's not just because I hate Gale. I mean, I do hate him, but it's not just because of that. I think even since the first time I watched the movie, I've hated him, but anyway. So I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say on book 1. And now we are gonna move on to book 2, Catching Fire. Okay, so I finished reading Catching Fire. The characters are great, the story is great, it holds up, the story is good, there's so much more conflict and intrigue, and it's fantastic, and it's still my favorite. Anyway, we begin about 3 months or so after the games were done. Peeta and Katniss are not really on talking terms. Problem is, they have a tour coming up and they have to kind of make up because they need to keep the pretense of their love alive for the cameras and for Snow. Why did I say it like that? And for Snow. You see, Gale is back. And as usual, he just complicates things for Katniss's hormonal teenage brain. One day, they are hunting together and I think he kisses her and that was it. Nothing else really happened. Thing is, Snow knows. He knows everything about everyone. Like, he's got all the big brain energy that Katniss doesn't. So, he pays her a visit and Katniss is like, well, he must be here because, you know, I outsmarted the game makers in the Capitol and made all of them look like fools, and I kind of single-handedly but low-key started a rebellion, and I'm the face of said rebellion, you know, so I think he might be here to kill me. But no, kind of, a little bit. Basically, he says, convince me and everyone in this country that you love that boy, or else. He's like, Miss Everdeen, let's promise not to lie to each other. Like, we're both smarter than that, and I think it's the healthiest and the easiest way for me to get what I want and for you not to die so soon. I know that boy's not your cousin, and you kissed him, and I know about it, so now you're playing my game. Big brain energy. Oh, also, there's this one part where Katniss' mom brings them, I think it was cookies, and they're like beautifully decorated and painted, and obviously Peeta made them. Katniss mentions that Peeta made them, and Snow has one of the best lines in the entire book. He's like, oh yes, Peeta, how is the love of your life? And I loved that. I laughed so hard. Like, Snow really is that bitch. He is so smart and cunning, and he's just like one step ahead of everyone. He knows everyone's dirty little secrets and he uses them to his advantage, of course, because why wouldn't he?
But I'm rich and I'm pretty, so it doesn't really matter.
So Katniss is like, oh no, I have to pretend to be in love with Peeta again, but now I have kissed Gale and I have so many conflicting emotions and horniness, all this built up horniness for both of them, especially Peeta, that I just don't know that I can do it.
Bitch, you better be joking.
By the way, this is the horniest book so far. And we also kind of find out that Katniss has a low-key kink for hands. Like, the way she describes Gale's hands and then Peeta's hands, especially Peeta's hands, is like, huh, I respect that, honey, because same. We're not here to kink shame anyone. Peeta and Katniss do this thing where they stock up on alcohol bottles for Haymitch in case there's a drought. Like, later on there is actually a drought. Like, enabling your friends alcoholism because it's their coping mechanism to their trauma and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, there's something sweet about that. Yay, teamwork! Throughout the tour, Katniss realizes that her words have a lot of power. Like, unintentionally, they do. Their last stop before going back to 12 is the Capitol, and they have a party at Snow's, and it's glamorous and fancy and dreamy, and the setting and the ambience are just, exquisite and luxurious. By the end of the party and the tour, Peeta and Katniss are engaged. They have announced it to the whole country. However, at one point in the party, Katniss looks over at Snow and like very subtly asks him like, did I do a good job? Did I do a good enough job? Did I convince everyone? And Snow's like, girl, no.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
When they go back to District 12, Katniss finds out that District 8 is not having a grand old time. The rebellion has hit them really hard. It's chaos. It's mayhem. And Katniss is like, I really didn't do a good job, did I? Oops. Anyway, there's a lot more to say, but I'm gonna attempt to do a bit of a rapid fire, which I don't think I'm good at, but I'm gonna try either way. So it changes the Peacekeepers at 12, which just unleashes chaos and everyone's so strict and just changes the lifestyles of everyone. And here is when Gale gets whipped. The Quarkquill gets announced and Katniss loses it. Then Peeta trains Haymitch and Katniss and himself for the games like they are career tribute. The reaping happens and the training at the Capitol, which is where we meet the other tributes like Finnick and Joanna and Biddy and Max and all that fun cast of people. And then of course right before the games start we have that very devastating scene where Cinna gets beaten up. The games in this book are just as good, if not better than the first ones, because the stakes are just higher. And then by the end, when they rescue Katniss and the hoverboard and she wakes up to realize that not only is Peeta not with them, but has been kidnapped by the Capitol, but District 12 is gone. It was bombed by the Capitol and most people died, and the few that managed to get out alive, led by Gale, might I add, which was pretty heroic on his part. But whatever. When we find out that 13 is actually real and has been existing and living and thriving underground as a community and as a society of their own, that is just the perfect ending and cliffhanger for Mockingjay. Just, yeah, I love it. It's so great. It's still my favorite. And now I'm gonna move on to Mockingjay. So I'll see you when I'm done. I have finished Mockingjay. And I guess the first thing I have to say or address is that for over 10 years, I've thought that this book was a very well received and loved and accepted book. However, upon reading the reviews for this book, come to find out, it's actually a very divisive book. And people have opinions about it, many opinions, most of which are wrong, but we'll address that in a minute. My main issue with the book is that it drags so much in between preparations for the war and the missions and stuff, but I mean, I guess that's part of like war, you know. It's a lot of sitting around and waiting for orders and waiting for something to happen so you can go into action, combat and whatnot. So I guess it's fine. It's part of the process. It's not always going to be action, right? Now, people have a very specific and loud complaint about Katniss seemingly not having any agency, but that's part of why the series works, because we know that from the moment she volunteered for the games, she lost any type of agency or freedom she ever had, and it was never going to be given back to her. So it's only natural that her bursts of savior complex are the only times she has any sort of agency. Anytime she blatantly ignores orders are the only times she has any sort of agency, any sort of freedom over her decisions and her mind and what she does. When she blatantly ignores 13's orders or Coin's orders or Plutarch's orders or Haymitch's orders, because that's when she works best, as we've seen in the first two books, and it's only more obvious in this one. She works best under pressure, under fire, with no script, just herself in the middle of saving someone or doing something that she feels is right. The portrayal of depression and anxiety and PTSD are so accurate and necessary for these characters to work as people, for us to want to root for them. There isn't a single person in this universe of the Hunger Games that doesn't suffer from some kind of mental illness. And add to that the pre-existing trauma of the games, and then the quarter call, and then the bombing of 12, and then moving to 13. Finding out 13 exists and it's still alive and thriving, and then all the combat and all the manipulation and the torturing and everything they have endured has been so much, and it's ridiculous for someone to think that they can just decide to ignore it. People expecting Katniss to just suddenly shed all her layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of trauma and depression like it's nothing to defeat the Capitol just because she's the chosen one. It's the most unrealistic thing Suzanne Collins could have done to Katniss as a protagonist. Like, people don't... You expected her to be strong and persevere and work through it and let go of her obstacle that is her trauma by the time she accepted to be the Mockingjay. It's not only wrong, but fundamentally moronic, and I despise you as a person, on principle. It seems like a lot happens in this book, but also not really, because I do agree with people on this, and it's that the Hunger Games, the games, was what moved the plot along and made it so fast-paced. All the action and the constant having to move and watching your back and not knowing who to trust. But I think it also happens here, albeit in a more subtle way. Mockingjay is a book mainly about political intrigue and war. It's a more rooted form of anxiety, and it works. She's been stripped from everything she knew, her home, her people, her routine. Like, sure, she has her family there with her, but she's been stripped of everything. She doesn't have Peeta with her. I mean, even Gale, everything's different. She's begun to put into question whether she can rely on him anymore, whether she can trust him. Even on Haymitch, she's so unreliable and unstable herself, she can't even trust her own instincts, which were mainly what gave her sort of her agency, but also like her what made her so powerful as a protagonist and as a person in the first two books, right? And she doesn't have that anymore because she cannot trust herself. She doesn't know what's real and what's not anymore. And that's such a powerful move. She's completely alone and defeated. She's powerless and she's scared, and she has nothing left to fight for.
Don't say that.
Now, Finnick's death. Let me read you what I wrote on my notes. Finnick is dead. I've known this for over a decade now, seen it multiple times on screen, and still it made me cry on my second read of this book. To be honest, it was quite sadder and more tragic in the movie. Here it's rather anticlimactic, but I guess that's the theme of the book. Everyone can die, anyone will die, ceremoniously or otherwise. Either way, it's mostly all for spectacle. Finnick dying wasn't. It was for the cause, and it happened to him as it happened to most people on the squad. Doesn't make it any less sad though.
Why, God, why?
It doesn't make it any less sad, but it does make it a little bit more palatable. Prim's death was pretty similar.
And now Chandler, why are you doing this to us?
But it didn't have the same effect that Finnick's had. Because although we know her, we're not as attached to Prim as we are to Finnick. Because we've been with Finnick throughout 2 books now, and with Prim only a few sins here and there. And it hurts because we know Katniss is gonna hurt, because we know how much she loves her. Other than that, it's pretty much inconsequential. And I think it was necessary for Katniss's final bout of madness. But aside from that purpose, it was pretty much unremarkable, which is kind of sad. I don't entirely know how I feel about Peeta's kidnapping and brainwashing. I think it was necessary, mainly because Coin wanted him as the Mockingjay instead of Katniss, and we know Peeta's never worked as the Mockingjay. And I think it only would have convoluted the story and stripped Katniss of her main purpose in the story, or her first purpose in the story, which was to bring him back. So, Gale. He was annoying for most of the book, like pining after Katniss and whatnot, but he did have his moment. He's a great strategist and a great soldier, and he had really great compelling arguments for attacking certain people in certain places in a very brutal way. I'll give him that. But he is still an insufferable asshole. He had a moment with Peeta that gave very much Jacob and Edward inside the tent in Eclipse, and It was so cringy. I loved every second of it. It was so good. Peeta says, I wonder how she'll make up her mind. And Gale says, oh, that I do know. Katniss will pick whoever she thinks she can survive with, which contrasts to the very end of the book, where she says that what I needed to survive is not Gale's fire kindled with rage and hatred. I have plenty of fire myself. What I need is the dandelion in the spring, the bright yellow that means rebirth instead of destruction, the promise that life can go on no matter how bad our losses, that it can be good again, and only Peeta can give me that. So after, when he whispers, you love me, real or not real, I tell him real. That should have been the last line of the whole series. That would have been such an iconic way to finish it. And having now reread all the books, I now will choose to ignore the epilogue. We did not need that epilogue. Now Snow, he's a showstopper. He is... Every scene he's in, he steals it, and I cannot get enough of him. He's always worked as a villain, and his final interaction with Katniss actually proves it. He is imprisoned. He's defeated. He has nowhere else to go. The rebels have already won, and still he manages to get inside her mind. And in the end, when she says she doesn't believe him, he reminds her that they had agreed not to lie to each other. And then she shoots Coin dead. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, Gale killing Prim. For over a decade, I believed that he had had an active, if slightly inadvertent, role in her demise. Come to find out, he didn't. And that makes me so mad because in his final goodbye to Katniss, I feel bad for him. I feel so bad for him. It was a Dumbledore, Aberforth, Grindelwald situation where we don't know whose spell killed Ariana. And I am pissed because he knows that Katniss won't be able to let it go. He's lost his chance to be with Katniss, and we're not even sure it was his fault. Doesn't mean I like him, but I felt bad for the bastard. And that's it. That was me rereading The Hunger Games 10 years later. These books hold so much meaning for me and have a very special place in my heart. The characters, the movies, just the story, everything. I love it so much. Like, in a way, I grew up with these characters. I grew up along with them. So I think my ranking would be Catching Fire, then The Hunger Games, and then Mockingjay. I thought about rereading Ballad of Birds and Snakes or whatever, but I decided not to. It's such a slow-paced book. I mean, I think it's worth a read, but just one, not twice. So that's why I'm not gonna read it. Let me know what you guys thought. Let me know if you liked it. Let me know what's your favorite book, your favorite scene, your favorite character. I think my favorite character is definitely Finnick. I love Finnick. I'm actually curious if I was the only one who didn't like it, or just like in the minority of people who didn't like Katniss. Peeta is fantastic. I still love him so much. I love Effie, I love Haymitch. I pretty much love everyone. Even Snow, even though I hate him so much. But Gale, he's the worst. If you like this video, then please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe, and that is it for me. Stay healthy, stay sane, try to do your best. I'm Erin, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!